1971. The Federal Reserve owns $7.7 trillion in assets. The United States Treasury owes the Federal Reserve $7.7 trillion in debt. Here's the part that breaks your brain. The Federal Reserve created that $7.7 trillion from nothing to buy the debt in the first place. The government owes money to an institution that created that money specifically to lend it to them. This exact mechanism collapsed Rome. It destroyed John Law's France. It ended Weimar Germany. Same pattern, same outcome. 3 empires, all convinced they were different. They weren't. Your paycheck is denominated in this currency. Your retirement is priced in these dollars. You're inside the pattern right now. Rome, 200 AD. 3 continents under Roman control, 50 million people, an empire that believed itself eternal. The denarius, Rome's currency, contained 95% pure silver. Soldiers trusted it, merchants accepted it. The empire ran on it. Then came the wars, endless borders, Germanic tribes in the north, Parthians in the east, legions cost money, more soldiers, more equipment, more fortifications. Tax revenue couldn't cover it. Emperor Septimius Severus found a solution. Not new taxes, not spending cuts. He debased the currency, reduced silver content from 95% to 85%, still looked like a denarius, still stamped with imperial authority, but 10% less silver. The extra metal funded 2 more legions, problem solved. Except it created a new problem. The moment you debase once, you must debase again. Military spending didn't decrease, it increased. Borders expanded, more legions required, more debasement needed. By 260 AD, 60 years later, the denarius contained 47% silver, worse than half. Merchants who accepted payment in the morning found those same coins worth less by evening. Soldiers paid in debased currency couldn't buy supplies. Farmers stopped accepting imperial coins entirely. The sequence moved like clockwork: debasement to fund deficits, inflation from debased currency, economic breakdown from inflation, political chaos from economic breakdown. Emperor Aurelian, 274 AD, tried to restore the currency. Too late. Rome had crossed the threshold. The pattern had accelerated beyond control. The Western Empire fragmented within 2 centuries. What should have been learned: you cannot create value from nothing. Debasing currency doesn't solve deficit problems, it multiplies them. Why it wasn't learned: the next empire believed itself smarter. France, 1716. King Louis XIV died, left France bankrupt. War of Spanish Succession drained the treasury. National debt, 3 billion livres. Annual revenue, barely 145 million. The mathematics were impossible. France couldn't service the debt from tax income. Enter John Law, Scottish economist, brilliant mind, fatal flaw. He convinced the French regent he'd discovered perpetual prosperity, not through production or trade, through paper. Law's system was elegant in theory. The Bank Royale would issue paper currency backed by the future wealth of French Louisiana. Mississippi Company shares would rise as investors realized Louisiana's potential. The government would pay debt with inflated share prices. Money from nothing, wealth from paper, prosperity from confidence. August 1719, Mississippi Company shares traded at 500 livres. December 1719, 10,000 livres, 4 months, 20 times increase, not from Louisiana producing wealth, from Law's bank printing currency to buy shares to inflate prices. The Banque Royale issued 2.7 billion livres in paper currency, backed by nothing except confidence in Law's system. Every livre printed made previous livres worth less. Merchants noticed, nobles noticed. They started converting paper back to gold and silver. May 1720, Law tried to stop the bleeding. Decree: paper currency would be gradually devalued. The market collapsed instantly. Shares fell from 10,000 to 500 in 6 weeks, 95% destruction of value. People who believed in the system lost everything. Those who converted to metal early preserved wealth. The French government defaulted anyway. Same pattern as Rome. Different mechanism. Identical outcome. Create money to solve deficit. Inflation destroys purchasing power. Confidence evaporates. System collapses. France took the lesson for exactly 1 generation, then forgot. Germany, 1921. Treaty of Versailles demanded reparations, 132 billion gold marks. Impossible sum. Germany's entire GDP couldn't cover annual payments. The Weimar government faced the same choice Rome faced, the same choice France faced. Default and face occupation, or create money. They chose creation. The Reichsbank, Germany's central bank, printed marks to pay reparations. January 1921, 8.9 marks to $1. Manageable. The government convinced itself moderate inflation was acceptable. Temporary measure, the economy would grow into the money supply. It didn't. Each payment required more marks. Each mark printed reduced the value of existing marks. By July 1922, 493 marks per dollar. 55 times devaluation in 18 months. The acceleration curve went vertical. December 1922, 7,589 marks per dollar. 15 times worse in 5 months. Workers demanded payment twice per day because marks lost value between morning and afternoon. Families wheeled currency to bakeries and wheelbarrows, not to buy bread because the paper weighed less than the bread. November 1923, 4.2 trillion marks to $1. Not millions, not billions, trillions. A pensioner's lifetime savings couldn't buy a loaf of bread. The middle class evaporated. Families that accumulated wealth through 3 generations watched it become worthless in 3 years. The Weimar Republic ended the hyperinflation by creating a new currency. Rentenmark, backed by land, the damage was permanent. An entire generation learned that paper currency was a lie, that trust in government money was faith in a fraud. Germany took 80 years, Rome took 80 years, Laws France took 4 years. Each cycle faster than the last. The pattern accelerates. The United States, 1971. President Nixon closed the gold window, ending dollar convertibility to gold. Before 1971, dollars represented a claim on gold. After, the dollar represented confidence. The Federal Reserve could now create money without constraint. No gold backing requirement, no conversion limit, pure fiat currency, the exact system that destroyed Rome, the exact system John Law built, the exact system that ended Weimar, but different this time. America was sophisticated, modern, had technology, economists. The Fed would manage the money supply responsibly. Here's what actually happened. 1971, U.S. national debt, $398 billion. 2024, U.S. national debt, $36.2 trillion, 91 times increase in 53 years. Federal Reserve balance sheet 2007, $870 billion. Federal Reserve balance sheet 2024, $7.7 trillion, 9 times increase in 17 years, accelerating. M2 money supply 2020, $15.5 trillion. M2 money supply 2023, $21.7 trillion, 40% expansion in 3 years. The mechanism is identical to every historical example. Government spends more than tax revenue. Deficit grows. Federal Reserve creates money to buy government debt. Government pays interest to Fed on money Fed created. Fed returns that interest to Treasury. The loop closes. You cannot pay debt with money created to fund debt. The mathematics are impossible. Rome discovered this. France discovered this. Germany discovered this. The United States is discovering it now. Current annual deficit, $2.1 trillion, not during the war, not during depression, during normal economic times. Interest payments on the national debt, $1.1 trillion annually, and rising. The trap is simple. Stop creating money. Experience a recession. Asset prices collapse. Banks fail. Political crisis. Continue creating money. Experience currency debasement. Inflation accelerates. Confidence erodes. Different crisis. Either choice leads to catastrophe, one immediate or one delayed. Every government chooses delay. Strip away complexity. Here's the actual process. The Federal Reserve creates money by buying assets, usually treasury bonds. They don't print physical cash. They create digital ledger entries. The government needs to borrow $1 billion. The Fed types $1 billion into the Treasury's account. That money didn't exist 10 seconds earlier. Now it does. Why do they do this? Political incentive structure. Politicians can't cut programs without losing elections. Can't raise taxes enough without losing elections. Borrowing delays consequences beyond their term. The Fed enables this by creating money to buy the debt. Why does it accelerate? Compound math. Debt creates interest. Interest increases debt. More borrowing required, more Fed creation needed. Each cycle requires larger intervention than the last. Like Rome debasing 10%, then 20%, then 50%. Each step mandatory once the previous step is taken. Why does it always end the same way? Mathematics and thermodynamics. You cannot create infinite claims against finite value. Eventually people realize the claims exceed the underlying value. Confidence breaks, the currency evaporates. Rome took 80 years from first debasement to collapse. France took 4 years. Weimar took 2 years. Each civilization had better technology than the last. Each collapsed faster. The pattern doesn't care about technology. It doesn't care about economic theory. It operates on mathematical inevitability. Create more claims than value, confidence erodes, system fails. You can delay it. You cannot stop it. The Federal Reserve cannot stop creating money without triggering immediate economic collapse. Banks hold trillions in bonds. Those bonds lose value if the Fed stops buying. Banks fail. Pension funds fail. Markets crash. Political suicide. But they cannot continue without eventual currency collapse. Every dollar created reduces the value of every dollar that exists. The purchasing power erodes. Eventually, foreign holders stop accepting dollars. Eventually, domestic holders flee to real assets. Eventually, confidence breaks. They know this. Fed officials studied Rome. They studied John Law. They studied Weimar. Jerome Powell has a PhD in economics. He understands the historical pattern. He cannot stop it. The choice isn't between good and bad outcomes. It's between immediate catastrophe and delayed catastrophe, between recession now or hyperinflation later, between political crisis today or currency crisis tomorrow. Every central bank in history made the same choice: delay, create more money, buy more time, hope something changes. Nothing ever changes. Your retirement account is denominated in dollars. Your paycheck is paid in dollars. Your savings are held in dollars. Every dollar is a claim against a system that cannot stop creating new claims. Rome's citizens didn't see it coming until bread became unaffordable. France's nobles didn't realize until their Mississippi shares became worthless. Weimar's pensioners didn't understand until their life savings couldn't buy food. The Federal Reserve owns $7.7 trillion in assets purchased with money created from nothing. The United States owes $7.7 trillion to the institution that created the money. The crash window is the next rollover cycle, 24 months where more than $9 trillion in treasuries have to find fresh buyers while interest costs already chew through $1.1 trillion per year. Miss that window and the spiral that vaporized Rome, France, and Weimar detonates in real time. This is not new. This is not unprecedented. This is not different. This is the pattern. And the pattern always completes.